It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Monday, August 14th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We got 2G Talks with Eddie Kwan, the Sunday Message Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? And how was your weekend? I'm sure you guys enjoyed your weekend, got rest, relaxation, you recharged, and of course we had the Sunday service, so I hope you guys really enjoyed that. If you haven't yet, leave a like, leave a comment to build our community. Just super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message, really good once again. Same theme as usual for the last 3 weeks. It's been ask me and learn from me. Well, the key point is to learn from the one that God sent, to learn from Jesus, right? So everyone, how was your weekend? Anything cool happen? Anything, for me, for some reason, I'm not sure if you guys have felt this before. It was an extra long and relaxing weekend. What does that mean? Like my perception of time for some reason was very slow and I loved it. I enjoyed it so much. It was weird. Friday felt like Saturday. You know what I mean? So like Friday for me felt like Saturday, and then the next day it's supposed to be Sunday, but it's Saturday. I'm like, whoa, like this is such a long weekend for me. And I just had a really good time meeting with people. I like, even this one person that we met up, we spoke for like 4.5 hours. It was just cool talk, just chilling, talking. It's good for me as a social person. I just need to talk sometimes. And, it's like when you talk, you can kind of unravel the things in your head, and then you can kind of things click and it makes sense to you. I'm not sure. I think girls will understand this more than I do, more than guys would. But for me, I'm a talking person. So I talk through my thoughts, and then my thoughts begin to come together to get more organized. And then it's like, oh, this is what I'm talking about. Kind of this is what I'm really thinking. So one of the things I was thinking is like, I think about myself and my future. And I thought to myself, it's like, what are my choices? Like here in this history, being in this history, the history of God, I got choices, right? And I realized that, when we're in a good place, we're always choosing between the ideal and the best choice. And they're two different things, right? So ideal is when things are at the peak condition. It's ideal. It's perfect. And the choice you make, you can make a choice because everything is ideal. Right? And of course, in most situations, it usually never is ideal. But there is that choice, like if everything worked out, if everything was like this, man, I would have done this. However, the best choice means that it's the choice you make looking at your current condition and situation, and look at what would work out for you with the given circumstances. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, that's like the best, the ideal and the best, right? Best is for right now. You know your situation, you know what you're going through, you know what you're feeling. And then ideal is like, man, if everything was, if I made the right decisions, or if this didn't happen, I would be like, I would do this instead, kind of thing, right? So I kind of look at it like pertaining to buying a car. Like say, imagine you have a dream car, the car you always wanted. And let's just pretend it's like a Mercedes S-Class, okay? And if the situation was ideal, you would be saving your money and you'd have like $100,000 saved in the bank account, which means you don't go out to eat all the time. You don't go out for entertainment. You stay at home. You make you meal prep and everything else, so you don't have to spend a lot of money, right? And that's the most ideal thing. However, as time goes on, we do make decisions and things happen, and unforeseen circumstances happen in life, and there's a best choice, right? And the best choice is, you might not be able to get the car because you may not have, you either didn't save up as much as you would have liked to, or you made bad decisions, or unforeseen circumstances and situations that give you no choice but to spend the money, to spend your savings. So you're ending up with the best situation. Like, this is all the stuff that I did. made some mistakes, or unforeseen circumstances, like, what happened in March, it's unforeseen, right? And it's best for me not to get the dream car, but it's better for me in my case to get this car, or else, in my situation, if I get my dream car, I'll be in massive debt, and that would actually give me more suffering. You know what I mean? So I was thinking about this when it came to the path I take when it comes to my missions. You know what I mean? I don't know why I keep saying you know what I mean, but I'm not even sure if you know what I mean at all either. I'm looking at two situations of my life. What happened over the last 4 years with the pandemic, decisions, situations, circumstances, what has led to this point. And then I'm thinking about, what would be the mission that would fit me the best? What's the best thing I need to do? And, in my head, of course, we're always looking at the dream job or the dream mission or the thing that you really, really want. But you kind of, when I start praying about and thinking about it even more deeply, it's actually not about what is ideal, because the situation is usually never ideal. But sometimes it's about what is the best choice you can make given the situation and circumstances that you're in right now. Because, I realize if I keep taking the most ideal choice, we may not, because the situation's not ideal, I may end up suffering more. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, I figured I may not even end up in the best place that I want to be in. So I need to look not at the ideal, because things are usually never ideal. Usually they don't reach that peak of being ideal. But I end up thinking about so let's take a look at my situation circumstance. So with the example of the car, I'll be like, instead of saving 100,000, I've only saved 60,000, which is 40, 50,000 off from what I really want for that car. So if I get that car, I'm going to be $40,000, $50,000 in debt. And I'm not only going to be using all my money in my savings, but on top of that, I'm going to be paying off a debt every month kind of thing, right? It's that's not ideal. And in most cases, if I thought even more, what's the best choice is, even if I just had 60,000, I would buy a $40,000 car, and then I'll have money left over for the insurance for the next couple of years and for gas and such. And I thought to myself, then I have to keep thinking what is the best choice that I have, more than what is ideal. Because if you look at it even now, the situation in Providence is not ideal. It's not ideal at all, but what is the best choice we can make? What are the things that we can do right now, which is the best choice? And that's kind of some of the conversation I was having, what should I do for this? Oh, they're this would be good. And I'm that would be good. But when I look at the current situation, I don't think I'd be able to do this properly or to the satisfaction where I'll be I did a good job, or I can do or make a bigger impact kind of thing. So that's one of the discussions I was having. I'm not sure if you guys have been through that, really assessing what's going on. A really good comment that came out on in the comment section. It was a comment on male evangelism, and this came from Karen over here in Vancouver. She's someone who works really, really hard. She evangelizes really well, and her comment was about male evangelism. I think some churches knew to look in advance for having more guys to evangelize more guys over the past 6 years. However, many left or didn't finish the Bible study, right? So for me, that's a very interesting thing, because if we were able to catch it, then what was the new strategy? What was the new way that we're going to do it? Besides just telling people, all right, guys, let's focus more on guys, male evangelism. I don't think that's a new method. That's not a new style. And the reason I say new method and new style is, I'm only saying this if your past style or method of evangelism didn't work. And if I look at most churches that I've been to, most of them didn't really work that well. If we were going to be honest, looking at evangelism in our churches and stuff like that, how many, regardless of whether it's focusing on males or females, just evangelism in general, how much was actually working? But I've seen people able to see the problem. However, instead of actually trying to really resolve it, it's kind of let's just do things the exact same way as we always have, except we're going to put more energy into males. And I think that is not a very wise way of doing it. It's just not going to work, because evangelism is still evangelism. And if it didn't work in the past using those methods, it's not going to work in the future using those methods. So think about this. Let's just say, like what Karen put in is like the last 6 years. So 6 years is a long time, and it is plenty of time to gather information and try new methods and ways to evangelize. So let me give you an example. I would say that collecting information and trying to figure out new ways, I would say that if we have a new way of doing evangelism or new style we want to try out, I would say a fair amount of time to try it out is anywhere from 4 to 6 months. To try this evangelism for about 4 to 6 months for about one semester, right? And think about it. If you noticed the problem 6 years ago, it means you could have seen what worked and what didn't work by trying out new methods. And if it takes 4 to 6 months to try a certain strategy, then that's like 12 to 18 different methods and strategies of evangelism over the last 6 years. And that's a lot of time to collect information and a lot of time to make things better, to tweak things, to figure out what works better to evangelize here. What's the problem we have with lecturing? Is the way that we're lecturing the best way to lecture? Is it really? So, and for me is like, when I say this, it kind of sounds like I'm putting all this pressure onto leadership. And I don't think it's all on leadership, right? Because a lot of it has to do with, even before we came into leadership, were we fully equipped? Were we trained to lead in a certain way, to find different ways to evangelize? And I don't even think it's the head leader's fault. I actually think if you have a ministry rep, the ministry rep should be thinking about this constantly. It's not just the head leader, right? Because the head leader's sole goal is not evangelism. The head leader has multiple goals. There'll be someone in charge of evangelism for smaller churches, and in larger churches, each of the departments are responsible for their own evangelism, and the head leader is not the one who's going and doing the evangelism or even lecturing with them in a larger church, right? So the people in charge of ministry should be the ones who are really, really working on it. Because if you're the ministry head, then ministry is your main focus, where a head leader's focus has like 4 or 5 different things, but they're trying to lead the entire church, which includes Milky Ways all the way up to the Blessed Families, right? So I think if we were able to catch it 6 years earlier, it should have been much more different than, hey guys, let's work harder and let's put more effort into it and focus it on the guys. Like, I don't think that would be the right way, right? I think that's destined for failure. And it's kind of like, what Karen wrote it's like, that's kind of what happened. It was destined to fail. Where she's like, yeah, 6 years and not everyone finished the study and not everyone stayed. And the answer is why? Or that's the question. The question is, why didn't they stay? What was the issue? What could we have done better? Right? People didn't finish the Bible study. Why? Why didn't they finish the Bible study? Is it because we got the wrong people? Is it because of the lecturing? Is it because, there's so many different reasons that come into it. 6 years is a long time which you can figure things out. Right? You can really figure things out and not just, let's just evangelize like we always have. I think that's where an even bigger issue happens, right? So that is something that I do think is very, very interesting. And, now that you have what Karen wrote is they basically have 6 years of information for evangelism over, 6 years worth. So the question is, what has changed? What's different? What should we do differently? Right? Like if someone was really, really able to focus on ministry, they'd be able to look at all the different things happening, why people were not finishing Bible study, why males were harder to get, why males leave Providence, what's the issues that we're facing. Like I've heard people just say, well, the guys don't take care of the guys. I'm like, that's just way too oversimplified. That's way too oversimplified. Right? Oh, the guys don't evangelize. The guys are this. No, that's just blaming on other people. We have to figure it out, right? And I'm not saying that the guys don't have any blame. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying we need to figure it out properly and do it in a way where everyone's gonna be like, let's try this next time. Hey, let's try this next time, right? And then some people might say is, well, we have no guys. And the answer is, what are you gonna do? Then you just stop? You just no evangelism whatsoever? No, you got to try something out. Try this, try that. What does this mean? What does that mean? Right? So I do think that's something that we have to kind of open our eyes and our hearts to even more. Also on Friday, a lot of great comments and a lot of DMs to me about the member that came back from the slander. from the Slander team basically gave a testimony, what he experienced. Of course, he's anonymous right now, and eventually when his situation's all settled, then it'll be very, very, he'll be able to like be open with it. But he just wanted to share with me because, he felt the guilt in his heart that he did this to Sunsteam. And then when he saw exactly what the Slanders were doing, he's like, oh my gosh, this is not the way to do it. And that's, that pushed him and propelled him to come back, right? Now, so many people commented, DM'd me, say that they were so inspired and it was so hopeful to them. And another person, actually, another good friend of mine, someone I've known for like 20 years, said that this could be misunderstood. And I was like, oh, interesting. So how could this be misunderstood? And what they said was, oh, because this guy, you might be making it sound like this person is the representative of all people who left at this time, right? Personally, I didn't get that feeling. And a lot of people, of course, just because a lot of people didn't write that doesn't mean that some people didn't feel that. So I understand this too, right? And of course, if some people may think that way, it's possible. It could be misunderstood because a lot of times people can hear something, and if there's a really contentious point that kind of sticks to them, they don't really hear all the other things happening right after. So, for one thing that makes people know for sure that I'm not talking about all people that left at this time this year, because what I said on Friday is this person has left like 10 years ago, right? He left 10 years ago, so he doesn't represent people who left at this time. Right? So I'm going to reiterate the point that why this person is important, why this person's testimony is important, right? So remember, he is not someone who left this year. He left a long time ago on his own accord, his own mistakes that he made, right? And he regrets them, okay? And there's two big points. One big point was about learning the strategies and tactics of the people who are slandering. Right? And that's something that I think is very, very beneficial, insightful for us because we don't see what's happening behind the scenes. We don't know, like, if it's done very honestly, and they're like, oh, because someone told them this, they wrote that down, and they're saying these things, then, it's hard for us to blame them because they're trusting what other people say, right? Of course, they should be checking it, but when we find out what their strategies and tactics and how they slander come out, we're like, whoa, like that's deliberate and deliberately deceitful. Wow. Okay, now we see what these people are kind of doing. And the other big point is this person came back after seeing how the slanderers were working, that it was so extreme and so deceitful that he's like, there's no way I'm going to do this. And he felt his conscience being pricked and he came back, right? And I would say that I talk to him, I talk to him even more nowadays just to see how he's doing. What's even more amazing about this guy? He contacted me about 3 months ago. About 3 months ago, he contacted me out of nowhere on Instagram, just out of nowhere. And I already knew he wasn't in Providence. I already knew that, right? And he texted me, see how things were going. And he kind of just the floodgates of his heart opened. He's just talking about how sorry, how bad he feels for betraying Sunsteam and stuff like that too. But just the other day, on Saturday, I was talking to him, and he told me why he called me so suddenly, out of the blue. He said that the night before he had a dream, and in this dream, he was standing in front of Sunsteam face to face, and Sunsteam there was no words that were spoken, but just feeling or shimjung. And he says all he could do standing in front of Sunsteam is just cry. And he said in his dream he wept and wept in front of Sunsteam. And then after he woke up, he had this dream. Then the next day he contacted me. So I was super moved to hear that this is God bringing him back, right? Sunsteam's bringing him back. And for me too, I'm very, very I'm looking forward to hearing more testimonies of people who come back and what they went through, what was going through their hearts and their minds. Because I think the one thing that we don't take into consideration, a lot of times we just look and say that, oh, well, this person left and this person left for this. Oh, what's wrong with them kind of thing. But when you listen to his testimony of the thoughts that he was going through, you realize that people are human. we are human. We're susceptible to influence. We're susceptible to environment, the thoughts we have in our heart, what people think about us, pleasing our parents, our family. Like there's so many things that are going on within the human mind that when I heard it, it made things much more human and much more understandable. Like, this is why. This is why. So, when for me is I was inspired and moved by it, but just to make sure that people aren't thinking that I'm saying that this guy is the representative for all people who left in 2023 because of the big splash that happened in March. Like I said, he came 10 years ago and he came back after joining the slander team, right? And seeing how bad it really was. So there should be no confusion about this. But I understand, like, this is something that's also, that makes me think deeply, is whenever, like, I'm speaking on a public platform and I'm speaking to hundreds of people, right? So hundreds of people, I'm speaking to hundreds of people, which means that even if I said everything absolutely clearly, there's always going to be people that misunderstand. Now, I'm not saying that I spoke clearly. I'm not saying that I absolutely spoke clearly, but I'm saying that what I realized is there's always going to be people that may misunderstand or misinterpret. And that's understandable because everyone's going through different situations and circumstances, right? Everyone is. And I think it's fair to say that, yeah, it's good that people tell me. It's good because when you tell me, I can understand, I can understand myself, yes, it's possible that people can misunderstand, for sure. Because even if I say something like this person left 11 years ago, so it's nothing to do with the people at this current time, but if this person left 11 years and I say that, however, if someone's going through a situation in life and then they hear something that I say, and once they hear it, it like triggers them, and they're like, oh my gosh, is he talking about me? And then all of a sudden, all the other things that I say are not going to go into their hearts and their minds. And I think we've all been through that before, where once we're in a certain mindset, we got that tunnel vision, and through that tunnel vision, we're like, oh, are they talking about these people? And that's very, very possible. It is very possible. So I think that it is something that that is going to happen no matter what. Can you imagine? Like, let's just say that there's 1,000 people listening every day. That would make it even crazier, wouldn't it? If there was 1,000 people listening to it every single day, then you're probably going to have not just one or two people misunderstanding. You'll probably have like 30, 50, 100 people misunderstanding instead. You know what I mean? So when I look at that, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense that we don't know what's going on in people's lives. And sometimes we mishear, sometimes we misunderstand, or I say things in the wrong way that could be misunderstood. So super thankful for all you guys out there that are calling me and telling me like they're moved or inspired, and people that really, really are really on the other side saying that, hey, that's not fair to say it this way. But I'm grateful because even the person that called me, the person I know for 20 years, super respectful, doesn't say anything bad. Intention is really, really good. It's very good intentions, right? So when I I'll reread the text and it's like, oh, this person is really kind and nice. They're not coming in with bad intentions or saying things in a bad way, right? So I am thankful for that because in the end, as people of this world on the earth, we are all brothers and sisters. We are, right? We're all on the same level. There's no one really that much higher than the other. It's just like a bunch of ants, right? We could be like arguing within each other, like I'm a bigger ant than you, but from a human's perspective, all the ants look the same size. They all do, right? So I think it's something that we have to open our hearts even more to, right? Oh, so I told you I had like this massive conversation and stuff like that also, right? So I was talking to this person and they asked me what my thoughts were. We talked about the the situation that happened in March. And we were talking about like, oh, in this situation, in this church, there's like this many people left or this many people stayed and this many people are kind of in the middle, right? So there's three different groups. There's like in the middle, there's gone, and there's stay. Stay, leave, in the middle, right? And myself, I'm going to give I'm only going to talk about my personal opinion. I have no problems with whatever stance people take, and I'm not going to sit there and try to convince them to come back. That's not what I'm going to do. Why? Because people have their choice. Even making that choice is a hard choice. I have no ill will towards anyone. I'm not, ill feelings like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're in the middle. I can't believe you left, right? Anyone who is at any situation, any stance, I do my very best not to say anything bad about people who are even slandering. And that's why I make it a priority for me not to speak badly about anyone on this podcast. I don't, right? And you guys have heard my podcast. I'm not saying bad stuff about the other side. I'm not. I make it, I'm very, very clear that I don't want to do that. That's not something I want to do at all, okay? So everyone out there, if you're in the middle, if you're waiting, this is, like I said, or if you've left and you're still listening to this, I'm not sitting here like, oh my gosh, what do you do? Like, I'll be very honest with you, and some of you who still talk to me that are who have left can testify that I still talk to you. I still talk to you. I have no problems with talking to you. I'm not sitting there like going, saying bad things about you at all, right? And if I'm going to be even more honest, for those that have left, I pray and hope that they come back. I do. But I don't have any ill will towards people who have left or anything like that. No negative feelings, right? And the only time I might have some negative feelings is if people are deliberately and actively doing things deceitfully to hurt others. And it's not truthful, and the method of doing it is not truthful. That's when it's different. Like, hey, that's terrible. Like, you can't be doing that. Like, that's not a normal thing for people to do. Purposely and deliberately deceive people. Like, that's something that if I found out, I would have a problem with that. But everyone, there's honest people out there who truly believe and say this, and this. They have experiences, whatever, and they left. I understand. People in the middle, I understand. And when one person said to me, "Is like, man, I can't understand the people in the middle." And once again, transparency here is, in the beginning, I couldn't understand people in the middle. In the beginning. But for myself, I thought to myself, I was like, wow. So this person I talked to on Saturday, and I thought to myself, I was like, oh, that's very, very interesting. And I was thinking deeply about this, like, so if, this is not about anyone else, because everyone can make their own decision. I'm talking about just myself. Could I make that decision to wait or be in the middle? So I started doing like this mental exercise. I'm like, okay, So people waiting in the middle, from a very general point of view, I thought to myself, it means that they're not taking a stance on, like, they don't believe or disbelieve, but they're waiting. The waiting is an actual stance, right? It's like, hey, I don't know what's true, so I'm just going to stay in the middle. And it's a choice. Like, it's not, and I thought even deeper, like, it's not about not doing anything. You make a choice not to do something, so you're still doing something. Being in the middle is still a choice. It's not what do you call it? It's not like you're not making a choice. It's not even waiting. You're making a choice to be there. And I thought to myself if I was waiting, I would have to consciously make the choice not to believe Sunsteam and not to believe the other side. And that would actually be true waiting. And this is why I do think some other people are not truly waiting. So let me show you what a stance that would not truly be waiting. Not truly be waiting is someone who, like in the Sunday message, only listens to one side. And like, let's just pretend this. They stop going to service, they stop coming to Providence, and they're in the other group of slanderers, but they still say in the middle. And I'm like, no, that's not waiting. Because truly waiting is not believing either side and just waiting for the end to come out. And that's like true waiting in my mind, right? It may, if you're really like, or you could do the opposite. You're either not listening to any side or you're listening to both sides, like truly deeply listening to both sides, right? Giving both sides a fair shake, which means that it's not like I only go to Sunday service and I only listen to Sunday message and I'm done for the week. I don't go to pre-dawn. I don't do all the other things. Like maybe you won't even go to Wednesday. Like that's not a fair shake. That's not. Waiting, if you're truly waiting, you're either completely disregarding both sides and you're truly waiting, or you are listening equally to both sides. So I'm going to church, I'm going to pre-dawn, I'm going to listen to the pre-dawn messages, I'm listening to the Wednesday messages, I'm listening to what the other people are accusing, I'm listening to both sides equally. And I would say those would be the only times you could actually say, I am truly, truly waiting, right? Because the three, like you're still in Provi or you're against Provi. There's like two things here, right? So, you're in Providence or you're not in Providence. It is black and white. Waiting. We think it's in the middle, but I don't think it's in the middle. I just don't think it's in the middle. Because, like, when I talk to some people, I want to get very honest with my personal opinion. People can make their own choices, but I have to make my own choice, which means I really deeply think through it, right? One side says he did it. One side, Sunseam says, I did not do it. Okay? And if you come to me and say that he never said that he didn't do it, then you probably haven't been listening to the messages over the last 6 weeks, right? It's very clear. Very clear. Sunseam's, no. It's, just the fact if he calls someone a slanderer, which means they're slandering him, saying that he did it. And he's like, no, I didn't do it, right? The same as what happened in the past in 2008. So, What we know about the situation is that we know both sides because the people accusing were in Providence, and then we know Sunseam, right, too. So we know both sides. So the question that comes up is, who do you trust? Now, if we were to do this unemotionally, right, like unemotionally is the best way to do it. The moment emotion comes in, your thoughts have been compromised. Your true thoughts, your rationale, your reason has been compromised the moment emotion comes in. Like, why would they lie? Oh, I know this person. They would never lie. Okay? So, and I'm sorry, like people who are believing the other, like the accusers, just the fact that they said it, that, oh, this happened, that's not proof. And that's not evidence either. It's an accusation. It's completely different. Proof and evidence is it's proven. If it's not, it's an accusation, right? So you can't look at that and say, oh, and like I said before, is whether it's letters directly from Sunseam, right, which they would have to verify, whatever it is, or if it's letters from Sunseam or looking exactly what he said or what was the context. I saw the letter of what was sent. I saw the letter of what was responded. Like, you couldn't just do that because, like I said in the past, is if it is that for sure that Sunseam did it, then this trial would already be over. It'd be done. It's already proven 100%, right? And this is why, like, one of the biggest things in the trial right now is there is not enough evidence to say Sunseam is guilty. There isn't right now. And this is why the only four different proofs or evidence for did he do it or not is going to be picture, video, audio, DNA. Those are the four major evidences that we need, right? Now, in this trial, the biggest evidence is the audio. The audio is the biggest evidence, okay? So when you look at what's happening with the audio, why is there big controversy with the audio? Because Korean forensics say they need the original. So they say it's not reasonable to believe it. Even the Korean forensics says it. And 2 other companies have said the same thing when they looked at the audio. It's like, no, you need to use the judicial power to get the original audio that they say they gave to Netflix. Once you have that, then it'll be 100% you can tell whether it's true or not. Which comes into the situation is, if it's really a true audio, why don't you just give the original so that people could test and say, look, it's a real audio. So now that we know it's real, let's find him guilty. That's as easy as it gets. They have the original, right? So that's why the biggest controversial thing right now is the audio. There's nothing else out there. Right? Like we said before both the people accusing in the trial right now, they said, oh, he did this to us 10 times, 15 times, 30 times. And when they put the dates and stuff when they were assaulted, remember that Sunseam has an ankle bracelet, and some of those times Sunseam wasn't even there. He wasn't even there when they said he did it, right? So the proof, right, is not a letter, or else that letter would be used in trial. The proof is not someone's testimony. It should be used, or that person should testify, right? And one thing that I find very disingenuous from one side to the next is if you have proof, and if you really think Sunseam is bad, why aren't you helping the case? Why don't you take all the proof you quote unquote say you have, take it to the court and the trial and say, look, we're here supporting you guys because we have real proof that Sunseam is guilty. Then you should go and take all that and send. But from what I hear and from what I heard from the beginning is, don't say anything about this. Oh, only we have this information. And that doesn't make any sense, because if you're really, really for the sides of the alleged victims, you should be helping them. Give them the information. Use it in the court. But in most cases, people don't really have enough evidence. It's paper thin evidence, right? So, and another thing that I think that's very, very interesting, the way that it works, like the way that the slanderer side use is, like, the proof is not something that happened in a church and some church leader did this to you, and because Sunseam raised this person, that's why I think Sunseam's guilty. No, the gap is too far. Oh, this head leader did this to me, so Sunseam's guilty. Makes no sense. It makes absolutely no, the gap is just way too big. This happened to me in the church. Well, Sunseam wasn't there, right? So, and another thing is, someone says to me like, oh, the church should be transparent, and I agree. I agree the church should be more transparent. However, not having transparency doesn't mean Sunseam's guilty. Like, transparency is for who? That's the thing you have to think about to yourself, is transparency is not about guilt or innocence. Transparency is for the followers, for the people below. Because regardless if, transparency just builds trust. If there's no transparency, it builds distrust. You don't know what is going on. There's more doubts. But if we say no transparency means that they're hiding something, it's irrational and unreasonable thinking. Transparency is more for the trust between the leaders and the followers, right? Or else we're going to start doubting, or else we're going to start thinking things that are not true. And that's normal and natural. That's why even in the right now in America, they want transparency of these trials. They want Donald Trump's trial to be open and in public so people actually see what is happening. Like, they want to see it. They want to know that whatever, like, if there's not enough transparency, then people stop believing in the leaders, what they say. You'll always be distrusting or doubting what the leaders say, right? So what I'm saying is that transparency has nothing to do with whether someone is guilty or innocent. It's got nothing to do with that. You can't use that as something saying that, oh, he's guilty because it's not transparent. No, it's got nothing to do with it. Transparency is more for followers and leaders, for a group, an organization, to have more trust between both so that they'll believe what they say. It's got nothing to do with guilty and innocent, right? And I would say that if you want to look at the most non-emotional way to deal with a situation, and this is why I believe that for myself, I couldn't wait. I couldn't be someone in waiting. The best way you can do something, and the way that, if you look at the way that the courts have been made, the court of law, the judicial system, they make a system that's supposed to be, Lady Justice is blind. They have that woman carrying this, like, has a scale, and then she has a blindfold because justice should be blind, right? And that's why the system used in the court of law is supposed to be the most logical, reasonable, rational, without any bias, discrimination, or anything else, right? It's not emotional at all. It's without emotion, right? You don't look at anything else. All you're looking for is what is true, right? And this is, like I said, this is why Lady Justice is blind. She does not care what you look like. She doesn't care what you did in the past. It's only about right now. And it's about the evidence put forth to prove that someone is innocent or guilty. Now, what we know is the best way of a judicial system is innocent until proven guilty. And the word you have to look at here is proven. You got to be proven, which means you can't just listen to like 10 people and say, oh my goodness, oh, and look at this letter. Oh my goodness. Oh, and this person said, oh, and this person. This is not proof. It is not the most reasonable, logical way without any emotion, right? You are innocent until proven guilty, which means that before any verdict is given, if you're already making a verdict in your mind, then you're emotionally compromised. Now, this is excluding those who say or who are accusing, right? Because they're saying it happened to them. That's completely, but we're talking about people on the outside listening in. To wait or even say, maybe it's true, is to already judge before it is proven. Because what ifs are what ifs. If someone says to me, what if it's true? I'll say, what if it isn't? Then what do? Oh, I'm going to go on the what if it's true. But what if it isn't? What ifs are what ifs. If someone is going through a trial, guess what? They're still innocent. Even if they're going through it, they're considered innocent until proven guilty. Right? You can't look at them as wrong. You can't look at them as bad. They have not been proven of anything. And it is the burden of proof on the accuser. So let me give an example of why I would never be in the middle. Imagine if someone accuses you, right, of something false. You did nothing. Someone accuses you. But ever since that person accused you, your best friend or your wife or husband stays away from you and says, I'm waiting to see the result. How would you feel? Honestly. For me, someone accuses me and then my wife or my best friend says, all right, I'm out of this. I don't believe you or them. I'd be really upset. I'd be super upset at these friends. They're already judging me before there's any proof or anything else. And if you think about it, it doesn't matter if you know both sides. You just can't judge someone before it is proven. Innocent until proven guilty. And the way that the judicial court is set up, we already know that the courts are not 100%. And that's why there's an appeal process. And that's why after that, there's Supreme Court. There's going to be transparency of the trial, transparency of the transcripts, transparency of the evidence so people know, this is what happened. And even after the Supreme Court, there have been very rare cases where someone is still innocent, but later on they're pardoned, right? A government official, a governor, or the president will pardon them. Because when you look at the facts and everything else, it's so egregious and unfair. Like there have been many people who are released from prison now because they're in jail for 30 years. And it was later on when they finally got the technology of DNA, right? To find DNA, this is when they're eventually pardoned and let out. I was like, oh my gosh, this is wrong. But before they didn't have that, so they couldn't prove it. And I think one of the worst things that can happen is the judgment of public opinion. It's one of the worst things that society has come to. I think it's one of the worst things. Already judging before anything happens. I think that's terrible. It happened with Kevin Spacey. Happens with Cristiano Ronaldo. Look up the 4 Duke lacrosse players in America. Their lives get ruined by the public, and even later when they're found innocent. That's how terrible it is. And if you really don't understand what that means, you should pray to God to put you in that situation just to see how unjust that is. That even though you're innocent, the whole world treats you like this instead. So for me, in my personal opinion, why I couldn't be in the middle, I just don't think for me, waiting is still a stance. We think it's a safe place, but I don't think so. For me, I couldn't do it, right? And the only reason I'm saying for me is other people can make their own choices, but for me, because I can make my own choice and I have to think about it, I don't understand what it means that you're not on one side or the other. Right? So, if someone accuses, so every time anyone accuses my wife, that I'm always going to step away from her? No, that makes no sense. Right? Proven, you are innocent until proven guilty. Even through the trial, you are innocent. Right? And that's why I think that mental exercises are really good. A mental exercise to really figure out, why would I not be on this side? Why would I be on this side here? Right? And I just think if we think 2-3 steps more deeply in, right? Then we'll be able to get a better idea of what side or where I should be. In my personal opinion, it's not anyone else's, I would be unhappy with myself if I took that stance, if it was just me, right? And it's only my stance, right? Like I said, I have the power and control of my own stance, right? Other people, it's up to them, right? No ill feelings, no ill will towards anyone else, right? Because that's their own choice. I can only make choice for myself. Personal freedom, each person has, and I'm okay with it because we all have free will, okay? So, yeah, a lot of deep thinking that I had over the weekend, a lot of good talks I had with people too, and I hope it's something that opened your eyes a little bit more to what is happening, or open your eyes to yourself and the way that you think also. All right, so let's get into the first break of the day.
Yeah, rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, belt to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying, everyone thinks I lost, but now I'm turning Super Saiyan, I gotta be new, gotta be great, I only gotta win this thing, fixing mistakes, fix who I am, all I wanna do is change, gotta be brave, gotta be tough, no more time for delaying, it's just training, all those times of paying off, pushing my limits, only God, I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to feel God, enemies watching, they want you to fall, but you have to be better, you have to give it your all, every day I make myself, but I know it's not easy, this is the life I chose and I know my spirit's breathing, the battle has only begun and I may take damage, but if I fall, I only know how to do one thing, rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, belt to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying, everyone thinks I lost, but now I'm turning Super Saiyan, I'm Goku turning Super Saiyan, I'm charged up, now I'm playing, on the mount like Sinai, I connect with God like Wi-Fi, receive the word, always praying, spiritual path where I'm staying, everyone thinks I lost, but I'm always with him, so you know I'm prevailing, protecting myself from Satan, armed with the truth, now my angels will shoot like, now I'm at my truest form, I'm trying to really be the greatest, the power level can't contain it, my energy is never draining, look how far we have made it, unlocking levels never hesitated, there's no try, you can just do it or don't, so fix your thoughts instead, everybody makes mistakes, just gotta take notes, can afford to do it again, life is so easy, if you just do what is right and just follow what's real, victory comes through skill, gotta stay on course, time to kill. Now's the time to rise and shine, thinking of the past and never forget, God is Lord, by your side, holding your hand, dry your eyes, trust in the Lord every night and day, he'll never let you go, don't fall away, be bold, be brave, and with all your heart, love the Lord to the end of time, rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, held to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying, everyone thinks I lost, but I'm turning Super Saiyan.
All right, so let's get into today's word study for today. And every single Monday, we have the Sunday message word study. This week's message, Ask Me and Learn From Me. Learn From Me is the theme for the retreats, the summer retreats that are happening in Korea right now. Hope you guys really enjoy it. Similar verse, we've heard it many times. It is Matthew 11:28-30. Lots of deep thoughts that I had from this week's message. And it does go back into resurrection. There's like 8 or 9 different reasons why resurrection is spiritual. So I'll go over that first. And then, of course, we have that deeper side in the end. We get a closer and deeper look at what is happening inside Korea. Yes, of course, we are to look at the Sunday message and say that, oh, this is really about me. But we also need to know, where is it coming from? Why is there a message about, don't do this, or don't say bad things inside? Don't say that the headquarters or the head leaders are bad people, or they're doing harm to Sunsteam and stuff like that too. Like, don't say those things. Why is this coming out? And that's something I do think that we'll go into in the second part. Okay, so let's get into this first point here, and the messages over the last 3 weeks has been learn from me, learn only from the one that has been sent, right? So if you start putting your own thoughts, you add your own thoughts, your own feelings, then, as this week's message said, then you couldn't be considered a disciple because it's no longer the words of the Lord, right? You can't testify for the Messiah if you're using your own thoughts and not the Messiah's words, all right? So let's take a look at this physical and spiritual resurrection. And I believe there's like 8 or 9 different things that you could look at of why. They're evidence for a resurrection of the spirit. All right. So, it wasn't really said like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it was. But I'm looking at it because I was listening to it. And as a lecturer and someone who's lecturing all the time, I'm thinking to myself like, ooh, let's take a look at all the different reasons that are shown. So I broke it down to, was it 8 or 9? There's 9. Yeah, there's 9 different reasons I wrote down, and I put numbers and bullet points on them so it gives us a better idea. One second, I gotta blow my nose, or I gotta sneeze, I mean. All right, I did both of them just for you guys. I don't know if you guys heard it. Okay, so let's take a look at evidence for the resurrection of the spirit, not the body. Okay, so the first one we heard many times is no one has seen the body after it resurrected, or else people would testify, oh, I saw the body, right? So if anything else, when you look at all the accounts of Jesus, whether he appeared and then disappeared, like the body can't just disappear from their sight, right? Or all of a sudden their eyes were open and then Jesus was gone. Or the body floats into the sky. So no one has ever seen the body after it resurrected. People would have testified about it. Jesus would have been holding hands and hugging his mother, his father, his mother, or his disciples and whatnot, which means it's just insufficient evidence for physical resurrection. When you look at all the evidence out there, there are some things like, oh no, there's no body in the tomb, which might seem like sufficient evidence, but actually it's not sufficient evidence because just because there's not a body doesn't mean it resurrected, right? And the example I always use is even if a plane crashes, there's 100 people in a plane, the plane crashes, they only found 99 bodies. Does that mean the one body is living? And the answer is no. There's plenty of things that could have happened. Whether a shark ate it, whether it sunk to the bottom, whether it was, a wave come and took it away, a whale ate it, whatever it was, there's so many different reasons then it's, that person's alive because we couldn't find the body, right? The second reason they had is even though time has passed, Jesus has not come back in the body, right? So time has passed, and all throughout history, like even Paul, even way after, after Jesus resurrected, he didn't see his body. And all the people for the last 2,000 years, no one has seen the body even as the time has passed. Because if the body was alive, what would he have done? Like I said, appeared to his followers, appeared to his disciples, come back to his own mother, right? So with time, he hasn't come back in the body. The third reasoning is when you look at the ascension in Acts chapter 1, right? And the angel said, we'll come back in the same way. Right? So when we look at this, Jesus left in the spirit, right? And a couple of reasons that you can look at, like number one is obviously flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. The body can't go into heaven anyways. Also is after Jesus ascended, they saw 2 angels, and angels are spiritual, which means your spiritual eyes need to be open. And if your spiritual eyes are open seeing these angels, your spiritual eyes were open to see the spirit go up into heaven, right? The fourth one is when you look at the physical resurrection in the body, in what Jesus did. Jesus resurrected, I think, 3 people. There was Lazarus, there was Jairus' daughter, and the widow's son, I believe, right? So those 3 were physically resurrected, but what eventually happened to them? They died again. When the time came, they died again, right? So basically, they died twice in their life. So the one thing we do know is that spiritual resurrection, the resurrection is not supposed to happen when you die again. The resurrection happens so that you can live forever, which it can only happen in the spirit. John chapter 5, verse 24, 25, one of the key verses of resurrection lecture is whoever listens and believes in listens to my word and believes in the one that sent me, they'll come out of the domain of death to life, right? So when people think of resurrection, the biggest problem they have is they only think physically and not spiritually at all, right? So the sixth reason is, can a body go to heaven if it comes back to life, right? And, Sunsi brought up some good points is, do you want dead corpses to come back to life? Like, what would you do by bringing dead corpses back to life? Is that really the thing that should happen? And the answer is no. You would want the spirit. You would need to save the spirit, not the body. Number 7 is one I haven't heard I haven't heard this one being used in the resurrection lecture, but it's 1 Corinthians 15, verse 13 and 14, talking about if there is no resurrection, there is no hope. And what does that mean? It doesn't obviously mean that if Jesus didn't resurrect physically, then there's no hope. That's not what it's saying. The mindset people already have is that it's physical, so they automatically assume that, oh, if there's no physical resurrection, then there's no hope. And the answer is, it makes no sense, because it's the spirit that goes to heaven, not the body. The body is supposed to remain here, is just a shell, a temporary time that we live here, and then our spirits are made during that time and goes up into heaven, right? So the eighth one is when God spoke in the Old Testament, God in the Old Testament said, my spirit will descend and will come through a body. So he actually said, my spirit will come. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, that the spirit of the Lord will rest on this person, which is the branch, coming from the stump of Jesse, which is the lineage of David, which is promised, God promised King David that the Messiah would come from his lineage out of Bethlehem, in which it happened, right? So God himself in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1 and 2 says, the spirit's going to rest on a person, okay? And the ninth reason that I was looking at is the spirit can only talk to other spirits, right? And this is why, because spirits and bodies are so different from each other, we rarely, most people won't even see a spirit in their lifetime. But those that do, it is rare. It's a dream. It's a vision. Super rare occasion when your spiritual eyes are open. It's not something that happens easily. And only very few people in the entire world get to see this, right? So what we see is, because they're different entities, spirits talk to spirits, bodies talk to bodies, right? So this is why the spirit has to connect with the body, work through that one body if they want to do their mission on the earth. And vice versa, if a body wants to work in the spiritual world, they've got to pray, become extra spiritual to do the work in the spiritual world, right? So those were the 9 different reasons out there why, 9 different evidences of a spiritual resurrection and not a physical one. So that was very, very enlightening and good to hear about. It's getting ourselves back into the lecturing once again. One of the points I thought that was very interesting is when Sunseem said that, Satan already knows that Jesus comes back in spirit. He already knows. He knows how God works, right? That's why Satan also finds a body to work through, right? And this is why, what did Satan do? He worked through ignorant people, ignorant believers that are waiting for Jesus, and he made them believe that the body has to come back to life. And this is why now today, many people are waiting for Jesus' body to come back for the Lord's second coming. Right? And this is why would Satan do this? So they can block people from coming to Jesus. Because as long as they believe Jesus coming in the body, they will never meet Jesus. Right? That's a great tactic that Satan uses, a very smart and wise tactic to hinder the believers from receiving the Lord's second coming. And this is why, we have to be aware of Satan's deep tricks, his tactics, his strategies, which are, sometimes if we don't know them, we won't realize when Satan is actually working through us. So that was kind of like the review of the evidences for a spiritual resurrection. Okay. Now the second part was, once again, we get insight on what is happening in Korea, right? Even though we are not there, even though we don't hear and see all these things happening, we get to see that this is what is happening in Korea. And I like how Sunseem started off started to talk about this topic. He talked about having lack of faith or not having 100% absolute faith. Right? And I think this is one of the issues why people stumble and people doubt, people leave Providence stuff, is when they don't have 100% faith, right? And they start to center on themselves, or they start to have their own thoughts, right? And think about this. It's kind of exactly what happened. When you have something that's like pricking your conscience or your mind, like, oh my gosh, is this really true? And then you start to have some doubt and you start to lack faith and you don't believe 100%, you start to center on yourself, your heart begins to change step by step. Right? And I would say a great example of this is the pandemic. During the pandemic, a lot of people began to lose their faith because slowly they stopped praying. Slowly they stopped paying attention to the word. Slowly they stopped, they couldn't go out to evangelize and do other things, right? And because of that, you can see that their hearts changed. But what we see happening today is people's hearts change to the point that they even come to persecute and antagonize the man of mission. Right? And, one of the points that he did make is, he says, like, when people start to lean towards the opposite sex, or when they center on themselves, anyone can leave and anyone can become an enemy. Anyone. Right? And this is why people give up their faith. This is why people betray Jesus and God. right? Because their center, their thoughts, what they stare, what they're centering on goes to another place where it shouldn't go. And this is why people can even get to the point of giving up their faith or betraying Jesus, right? And if you think about it, if you betray Jesus and Jesus is using the man of mission as his body, then who becomes the target on the earth? It's obviously the man of mission, becomes a target for slander, target for persecution, target for oppression, all these other different things, right? The people will come against him. So this, and then the message went into look at the people right now. And we're talking mainly people in Korea at this time, from what I'm reading, right? And what we see is there are people out there, if they are blind, and they don't really know what's going on, then they go astray, or they can become enemies, right? And it's because people don't know 100%, and this is why there's a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of reasons why people turn away, right? And this is why we have to be those that don't listen to the words of others on the other side, right? Because a lot of times they'll take some truth and mix it with something that is untrue. Like remember the guy who was talking about it on Friday. I was telling you like how they're actually making these stories. They mix truth with words against the man of mission, right? And this is where it comes into us too. If we are absolute and we understand 100% in this history, like hey, I got enough proof. This is the history of God. I know it 100%. Right? It's not any different than anyone in Christianity who is 100% in Christianity. It doesn't matter what anyone accuses Jesus, anyone says about Jesus, 100%, I don't care. I believe in the history of God, right? It's exact same position. So you're not going to be like, well, you shouldn't be like that. You should always, no. There comes a point where you have enough. You have enough information where you say, this is the words of God. This is the truth, right? But what Sunseem's saying is now there are people out there that are writing words that are lies, or they're slight lies, or things to go against a man of mission, or they use such thin evidence that is fabricated, right? Where we have to understand is if we start focusing and pouring our heart into reading those words, this is when we get influenced by it. Because I'll tell you one thing, the one thing that human beings like is controversy and gossip. We do. It's just something that's interesting. Like, oh, did you hear about this? Oh, did you hear about that? We need to be those that realize, hey, if you believe, if you're 100% on it, you have absolute faith, there's no point in reading those things. There's actually no point because it doesn't change anything. It doesn't. Right? That's why it says to talk about people reading words from outside of Providence, words that are against Providence, provocative words against others inside Providence, whatever it is, right? We need to understand is if you believe, like for those that don't believe, there's no choice. I can't say anything to them. But if you really have 100%, yeah, this is it. There's no point of reading the other stuff. There's no point of even knowing it. You know what I mean? So if you think about this, it's like imagine it's your husband or your wife, and there's people that say bad things. Imagine you become a YouTuber or something, and people write all this crappy stuff about you, accusing you of things. Wouldn't you be kind of annoyed and even more so be upset if your husband's out there just reading all the negative stuff about you? I wouldn't be happy. I would want the person to say, don't worry about that. I know you. I trust you. Don't worry. Yeah. Don't even read that stuff. It's junk. I want a wife like that. Right? Why would the woman read words against her own husband? And imagine if that husband is the emperor, right? The king. And if you just keep reading those words, eventually when they find out, you're like, oh, you don't even trust me. You don't even believe in me? All right, fine. And then the person's gone. So even what we heard from Friday, you see a lot of the people, they're trying to lure us with words so that, people are trying to lure us with words so that we turn our backs, right? So there's no point of listening to it, right? And a lot of times in the beginning when we read some of it, we're like, oh, like Netflix, I'm like, oh, I've already heard this. Oh, I already know the answer to this one. Oh my gosh, why are they using stuff that is already disproven? Already things that were not even acceptable in courts, that they wouldn't even go to court, right? So this is the thing, like I said, if you just skim the words of Providence, but then you start reading the words really deeply, those against us, that's not being in the middle, right? People like the provocative stuff. We like the gossip. Those are things that interest and it piques our dopamine and everything else, right? So I think it's something that we really have to see something is happening. And what's going on is Satan is making his attacks right now. Look, we've made it 5 months in, guys. We're 5 months in. We start to see more and more information. We're like, good gosh, like the evidence is nothing close to what people are saying. The evidence that they're saying, the testimonies, this and that, a lot of things are being disproven. We're like, okay, like the what we know now, we are way more comfortable than we were 5 months ago. Way more comfortable, right? And it's kind of like, I love that the vision that Sunsim had during the pre-dawn when he was praying. Deep mountain valley, there's this amazing ship in the sky. It looks so elegant and glorious. But when it descends to the ground, he's like, oh, this ship's shabby, right? It's like, guys say this is like, good from far, far from good. And, guys will say this like when they see, when they look very far away, a girl looks really pretty. But when you look closer, like, oh, okay, they're not as pretty as I thought. Kind of like good from far, far from good kind of thing, right? I never use those words, by the way. My friends did. So there's a large ship, super shabby looking when it finally came down. Idol worshippers came out, and he realized, wow, they're doing illegal trade. They're selling like stolen goods and stuff like that. And they, like showed him this really nice shiny watch. But when Sunsim looked at it even closely, they're asking for like $9,000. When he looked at it, he's like, ugh, this is a piece of junk, right? And Sunsim's basically like, you have any idea who I am? I know this is junk. I know who you are, right? And as more and more he saw that all these imported goods were all worn out, they were shabby looking, they were nothing close to the prices that we were saying. The ship was majestic when it was from far away, but on the ground it looked super shabby. And Sunsim was like, yeah, this symbolizes those who are against us, right? Their words are like the junk, right? The illegal junk trade, right? Words without evidence, thin evidence, right? It's groundless rumors, and they're acting on words. They're acting on what they hear without even truly checking it. And that's something that I think that people should really be doing when it comes to people accusing. You have to really check. It can't be you don't believe what I'm saying. You gotta believe me. I'm not lying. No, don't fall for tears. I'm not gonna fall for tears. This is serious. When you're bringing accusations, criminal accusations, it's not going to be based on tears. If you go to a court of law and someone cries, do you think that's going to be like, oh, okay, well, since you cried, then this person must be guilty? No way. It doesn't work that way, right? Then the ship left and disappeared in Sunsim's vision. And the Holy Spirit said, these are the people who practice unlawful deeds in providence. People who try to persuade through letters, deceived you and acted up pretending until now, right? So if you look at this trading ship, right, this trading ship came from the outside. It's people on the outside of Providence approaching those inside Providence with rumors and slanders. And then once they start selling them these things, the people who believe it will keep in touch with each other, spread words against Providence, and then they'll take those words and spread it to other people inside. But in the end, God's going to judge. So we see that there's an issue. The issue is there are people on the outside, meaning either people who are completely against Providence, like KDHs and stuff, or the people who have broken off from Providence and saying that they're going to start a new church. They're going to come in and call and start talking to people saying, hey, look, listen to this, listen to this, listen to this. And they'll spread these things without checking it. People are going to believe, not because they checked, like they absolutely checked, but it's because they're hearing the words that they want to hear with itching ears, right? And then they'll take it and they'll spread without checking, because that's what people like to do. We like to gossip. We like to tell things to people, right? So there's people doing this inside Providence right now. They're talking to people on the outside, getting the information and spreading it on the inside, right? So that's why, they're working in secret, right, on their own, complaining about those inside Providence, right? If you don't check, you're spreading a rumor, right? You got to check it before you spread it, right? Some words are from, and this, I even like these words are even more true to me, is even if some things are 100% confirmed, you can't just say it. Don't just say those things. Do things out of love for your brothers, not out of hatred. Why? Because people can make mistakes. And if they make the mistake and then you start spreading it and all these rumors like come out about this person, the person's going to leave Providence because all these people are spreading rumors about them, or they feel so bad because everyone knows the bad thing that they did. Let them deal with it with Sunstream. Let them deal with it, right? In the right way. If we're doing things out of love, it's not about doing things because I want to do it my way. Oh, these persons said this, so I'm going to spread it to every person. That doesn't make any sense. It's without love. Even if it's 100% true. I love that part. Yeah, we have to be respectful. We have to think about our brothers and sisters. I would rather not tell anyone, just tell that person. They deal with it with Sunstream, and then they settled it, and they're going to be fine in this history. Instead of everyone knowing that this person is so embarrassed and ashamed that they leave Providence. Like, what's the point of that? We have to do it where we're focusing only on the words of the Lord. Jesus only. Jesus and his body. Right? And anything that's related to Sunstream, where people are like saying bad things about the lawyers, people saying bad things about headquarters in Korea, people saying bad things about certain head leaders, right? Do you really know everything that's going on? Do we really? Is it like a real accusation that's enough to warrant for people to say that type of thing? That's why there's no point of paying attention to it. Don't pay attention to it. Don't spread it. Check everything. Right? And if someone comes to me and says, hey, I heard about this, then you know what the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to say, hey, hold on. I'm going to go check on this. I'm going to see what the real answer is behind this. I'm going to go check in Korea. I'm going to go check in another country. I'm going to go check with the person themselves. See what is this real or not? And that's how we have to do it. And like put it this way, if we just did it that way from the very beginning, we checked everything that came our way, don't you think most of this wouldn't have happened if we were checking it instead of not checking, being, oh, Sunstream, what? And then they go off and spread it to other people. I saw that happen in this year. People so angry. People so, oh, I can't believe Sunstream did this. I'm like, you just heard it. How do you know it's true? Did you really check it? Did you really check it? And for me, it's just like, yeah, you got to check it. And if you can't get something that's reasonable, why would you even say it to other people? It's kind of like in the courts. Hey, is this audio file trustable? Well, they have to see if it's reasonable to accept. And guess what the Korean forensics say? It's not reasonable to accept it. But it's the prosecution that keeps pushing, no, we need to accept it. They test it from 2 other forensics and they're like, nope, not reasonable enough to accept it. It looks like there's a lot of red flags with this audio. If we can get the original audio, this is when we can tell you exactly 100%. But right now, so many red flags in that audio, you can't trust it. It's not reasonable to trust it. Not reasonable. Remember, it's not the court saying to accept it. It's the prosecution saying that they should accept it, even though Korean forensics, Taiwan forensics, U.S. forensics are saying, nope, there's too many red flags. Would you trust and put someone in jail for something that's not reasonable? No way. And then you kind of see what Sunstream said about if writing articles in public, like in the public newspapers and stuff like that, you need permission to do that. Don't just do it. Don't just write things in the world about Providence, right? Don't do it behind the backs of the headquarters. Don't do it behind the backs of the head leaders, right? Because a lot of people, some people are swayed by the outside, right? So, we have to understand is everything has to be done in an organized way. It's not saying don't write it. That's not what Sunstream's saying. He's like, do it properly. And if you're going to write about something, don't you think you should check and make sure that everything you say is correct? Shouldn't you? Right? It's not saying don't do it. It's saying, look, get everything checked. See if it's the right thing we should do. What if it's something that actually hurts Sunstream in the end instead? And then Sunstream goes into, there's people saying that the head leaders, the headquarters are blocking Sunstream's work. But I'm telling you, Sunstream's like, it's not the case. So it's not the case. And if there are problems, let them fix their contradictions and let me replace them so that they can do better. Why are you all of a sudden taking the position of the head? That's a major problem, right? We can't become like the religious leaders who were against Jesus at their time, right? We have to learn only from the Lord, right? We can't be, like Sunstream was talking about an echo chamber, right? People only know what is in their group. They only know what's in their gathering. They only know from their own field, right? They only know. That's why people have to discuss and talk with each other instead of just like spreading out rumors left and right. right? Just like, what was the example Sansim said? He said, a person from the countryside only knows what's happening in the countryside. They don't know what's happening in the city, right? Who knows about Sansim's life? Even if you live next to him, he said, if I don't teach you, if I don't tell you what's going on, you're not going to know. Right? And another one, he said, Sansim was like, only use the banner of CGM and that's it. So it means that other people, like we heard in the Holy Spirit letters, that people are making their own associations, saying that they're against the head leaders, HQ, stuff like that. Don't use other banners. Don't spread rumors. You've become harmful. You become toxic instead of helping anyone. Even Sansim was like, why am I bringing this up every week for the last 3 weeks? And all these letters keep coming out. Why does it keep coming? Because you keep writing these things. You should have watched. You should have waited. Then everything would have been resolved. Right? So, if you've caused loss, you are responsible. And that's a scary thing. Will you be accountable for all the people that were lost because of what you said, because of what you wrote, because of what you did? Right? And like when Sansim says, what are rumors? Rumors happen when people are not clear with what was being said. They're not clear. That's why when I look at some of the letters that people say, oh, look, Sansim has, what does he say? He's confessed. And the answer is, no, he didn't. Read it. There's no confession there. Rumors spread because people are not clear with what has been said. Right? And one of the worst things, Sansim says, public opinion is also the same. You're judging as you hear and see. But if you look in Isaiah chapter 11, it's the Messiah comes. He does not judge by what he hears and does not by what he sees. He judges by truth, by righteousness. So we shouldn't do the same things as other people, right? Even if you think you're doing it for the good of Sansim, why? There's no point of spreading false rumors because it's not good for Sansim, right? And in the end, Sansim's like, you're only slandering those that work hard. Do they make mistakes? Absolutely. We're going to make mistakes. Is it a very sensitive time? Absolutely. But we're going to make those. It's just going to happen. Stop assuming. Stop speculating, right? Just like Peter did. Peter says, Jesus, you'll never die on the cross. He's like, behind me, Satan. You only have your own thoughts. You're confusing yourself. And now they're driving Providence people into confusion. And this is why, what do we need to do? Excuse me. We need to repent. We need to make sure we cover our losses, right? And this is why it's great that when you guys, in the first section, people called me and said, hey, what about this? What about this? I think I felt this. I was like, yeah, just tell me, right? And then I'll look into it and I'll like, yeah, I have no problems with it because I didn't mean it that way. Right? So just know this. Or maybe you didn't hear this one thing that I said, right? So for me, I'm just like, yeah, I understand. So it's good for us to have good feedback and talk to each other as best as possible, right? So I'm very, very grateful and thankful for this week's message. We get an idea of how rough the waters are getting in Korea. And it makes us thankful, too, that we're kind of in a safe place where we are right now. But I hope that because we're in the safe place and we have a clearer mind, we have to be those that have to pray even more deeply. We have to be those that pray with a clear conscience too. Okay? So let's really pray for Korea and the situation to make sure everything gets resolved. All right? So there it is. That is the word study for today. Hope you guys enjoyed that. That is the message. Ask me and learn from me. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 to 30. All right? So let's get into the second break of the day.
我看见主的模样 So alive, so alive 我听见主的声音 So clear, so clear 他的爱融化我心使我灵魂安然平静那话语充满能力使我能看见改变的神迹多幸运在今时代里与主一起经历风雨一生用尽 我看见历史前进着 So alive So alive 我听见话语满溢着 So clear So clear 主的爱始终如一不曾改变使我能完全沉浸主话语确实不必使我能体会神爱的旨意多幸运在新时代里与主一起经历风雨一生用尽真心持守我对天的约定属天的路我越走越确信感谢圣灵强烈引导我心灵当大有主同在包围世纪我会怀抱感谢忠诚实践到底主啊我爱你多幸运在新时代里与主一起经历风雨一生用尽真心持守我对天的约定多幸运在新时代里与主一起经历风雨一生用尽真心持守我对天的约定我看见主的模样 So alive So
Okay, so let's get into the final segment for today. And of course, every single Monday we have 2G Talks with Eddie Kwan over there in San Francisco. Currently, he's going off applying for his law school. So let's pray for Eddie so that he can get into the school that is perfect for God's will for him. Today, what is Eddie going to be talking about? And today, Eddie's topic. Well, he's been busy, of course, with law school applications, spending time with some visiting members. But he's going to talk about the things that he's been going through during this segment. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy this. Everyone, please welcome all the way over there from San Francisco. This is Eddie Kwan with 2G Talks.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another week's episode of 2G Talks. I'm so happy to be here once again and to share with you guys, some things that I think happened this week that I think can tie into this segment related to second generation, but also to everyone at home in the hopes that it will help people to kind of reinvent themselves once again. I really see that, our life is a series of kind of remaking ourselves over and over again, right? Like the progress isn't linear directly upwards, but there's like ups and downs, but overall we hope that the trajectory is going upwards, right? And I know that's our hope. And I think that's the hope of all human beings, but here in Providence we have an even higher hope, an even more specific hope, and we know what that is, right? Stemming from the purpose of creation. So we hope to go closer to that will, but sometimes we might go a little bit to the left or to the right, and we have to find ourselves back in the center again. So hopefully this segment today can be something like that. If this applies to you, and even if it doesn't, it can be an interesting thing to reflect on for this week too. Once again, we have kind of a similar message from the last few weeks, and I think I already talked about the scriptures from Matthew 11 quite a few times in the last few weeks. So for me, the fact that it's coming up over and over again, it's really making me reflect even more. And like the fact that 선생님, but and also the Lord Jesus Christ and the Trinity want to emphasize that scripture over and over again. I think it really means a lot. And so, kind of in line with that, today I drove. There was a member visiting from the Busan church. He's doing a PhD at the Busan University, and he was here for the last 7 weeks to do a program here in Stanford. And so I spent quite a bit of time with him the last few weeks, even though it was busy for me too with preparation for law school and stuff. I still tried to do my best to spend time with him, and he was very grateful for everything. And I think more than anything, like really thinking about it, because there were times where it was like hard for me to like make up my mind to go to see him, but then at the same time I was like, like I can't not see him either, because it would leave this kind of this it would kind of grab a hold of my heart, and it would make it really hard, right? It would grab a hold of my conscience, and be like, hey, like this is something that you should do in taking care of people. So I saw him as much as I could, probably more than I could to some degree too. But as I was driving him to the airport, he was telling me for the first time in 7 weeks, that actually when he was coming here, at first before he came, he didn't have high hopes for the trip. In fact, he was kind of like hesitant to go, and he was not in a good mood about it in particular, because when he was coming, because it's through his university and it's through his program and through his professor, and so at first they were supposed to sponsor him and like a couple other students to come here to be part of this exchange program for a couple of weeks, but all of a sudden, after like his flight was arranged and his accommodations were like paid for, they said that they couldn't sponsor the trip anymore, right? So he already bought his ticket, he already bought his rented out an accommodation for those 7 weeks, so it was hard for him to back out, and the school was not only supposed to help cover those costs, but they were also supposed to give him some spending money and a stipend for his time here, but they got rid of those things, and they said they couldn't do it anymore. And so in light of that, he really didn't want to come from the beginning, and when he was like riding the plane here, he said that the plane food was so terrible too, so that like really even up until that moment he was like lamenting having to come here, but after he came to the US, so many things here were completely different from what he expected, and really for those entire like 7 weeks that he was here, God really prepared everything and did so much through like even preparing like pretty much his whole itinerary for him, and we had the Estes retreat while he was here, and he was able to attend that too, and he was able to stay with the members a house that was away in a different country. So like all of these things are really lined up for him, and the members here took really a good care of him. And it's funny because apparently the headquarters in Korea, when he told them that he was coming here, they said they didn't really know the state of American Providence at the time, and they said the state of American Providence wasn't very good at the time. I don't know when they were talking to him about it, but he said when he came here the reality was quite different, and so I was really grateful to hear how thankful that he was, not just to American Providence or to the members here in San Francisco, but really to the Trinity for working through everything, right, to make it happen. And I really have experienced many things like that too. And the other thing that I really saw from like conversing with him quite a few times, and like while he was here, I was able to also watch some of the services from Korea too, right, like from the Busan church and from other places, since he got to join them on Saturdays. So I watched them, and that was really great to see too. I know Pastor Sky talked a couple weeks ago too, on the MSD 117.8, about how like there's all of these new like praise leaders and all these new leaders taking the stage, and it's kind of like a weird sort of feeling, right? Because on one hand, like all of the people who were heavily experienced, like many of them are no longer in those positions, and so we're seeing a lot of fresh faces. So it's like two things, right? It's hopeful because it's like a fresh new start in a sense, and once again it like I mentioned at the very beginning of the segment, it's like you're reinventing yourself once again. We're constantly reinventing ourselves, and so in that way, it can be a hopeful thing. And on the other hand, like it might be sad to see like people who like it might feel like the level's gone down in a certain sense, right? But I think like having that kind of mentality doesn't bode well, right, for us. And I think it's something that we all know, and something that we have talked about, and something that Pastor Sky has talked about too. Like I think we really have to look at this with a hopeful eye. And like part of the reason why I say that too is because just like this member from Busan who came, and for myself too, I've really seen that everything I do, like when I just try to do it according to what I think I should do and the route that I should take, it never pans out the way that I imagine, right? Like I don't like for everyone too. I'm kind of curious, like how many times like does something turn out exactly the way that you think it would, right? Like those kind of things, I don't think it even remains in your memory, even if they do turn out exactly the way that you do. But for everything that I've like kind of really cared about, it always turned out different from what I expected. And when I try to do things according to what I believe that God wanted me to do at the time, it really worked out better than I could have, than what I envisioned. And when I did things kind of like in the absence of God, then it turned out worse than I could have imagined. And so same thing with the guy too, right? When he came here, like even though he was like kind of like he said, when he first started sharing about coming here, he said the first thing he said was that he didn't feel thankful when he first came because of the situation, right? Because he's a student, right? So money is tight. So imagine like he bought this expensive flight and like prepared these accommodations, and then he just finds out that it's no longer sponsored, right? And he's gonna have to spend his own money, and that must have been a very difficult thing too. And it's hard to feel thankful in that moment, but like when these 7 weeks are up, like one of the things we said bye to one of the operation team reps here, and one of the things that we were talking about was like, wow, like how long have you been here, right? Has it been a month? Has it been two? And like it's been 7 weeks already, but it really felt like he came like maybe a month ago. And so the time that he was here really went by very quickly. And I think at the very end of it, when he reflects on it, like really God did so many things for him that he could not have imagined. And so for me too, and I believe for everyone at home too, this is something that's absolutely true. I was listening to the message, well, for me, which is for tomorrow, from Korea. And so, I don't know what it would be like in English yet until I listen to it. But one of the things that I think kind of came up that I thought was interesting was talking about like victims mentality, right? Like when we think that things aren't working out. And I think one of the things that was mentioned in the message for us was that people who are depressed have this kind of tendency to look at things negatively, right? And so one of the things that I see for everyone is, right, even like whether or not, and this is kind of a message that we heard quite a few times over the last few years, right? Like whether or not your surroundings are heaven or hell, it really depends on your mentality, right? Even if you're living in paradise, if you're inside your mind you're living in hell, then no matter what your surroundings are, you'll be feeling that pain and that suffering. And I think vice versa, it stands true too. And I think this is the even more powerful thing, right? Even if our external circumstances are, have whatever going on, if internally we are in the right place and we're not in hell within our hearts, then the things on the outside don't seem as bad, right? So that kind of control that we have over like how we perceive things depending on where our state of being is internally, I think that's such a powerful thing. And so I think part of what I wanted to share today with even sharing about the Busan member too is that I think we really get to define like our outlook, right? And it's the same thing we talked about with like all of the changes like in Korea and watching the services. We can look at things without hope, and we can look at it as like kind of like a sad thing that certain things are happening. And I think if you do that, right, I don't really know what benefit comes out from perceiving things in that kind of way. But when we look at things with hope, and look towards the future, which honestly we just have to. I think things turn out better than the way that we think. right? And so I really hope that with each person that this is something that we can adopt. And part of the reason why I bring this up is because I've been talking about this with quite a few members, but I have the test that's coming up in about a month, a little bit less than a month now, and then afterwards I have to apply to school, and then after that I have approximately a year left before I start school. And so in the past I was thinking about like, oh, maybe I should work in that time and make some extra money, or like I'm trying not to think about this until after the application cycle is over, but I'm thinking about, like, could I do something with that within that year? Like, what kind of things could I do? And so, like, kind of in line with what I was thinking and what I was sharing earlier, I'm no longer just trying to think from my perspective, but trying to think, like, okay, like, what would God want me to do within that year? I'm sure I'll find out when I get there, but it might not be what I think it might be. But before, that would have like kind of made me feel like stressed out or anxious or kind of doubtful, kind of like what the members shared too. And I'm sure there might be things like that as I approach it. But right now I'm kind of coming from a place of gratitude and hope, and knowing that whatever God has planned for me, it'll be better than what I might think right now, or what I might find for that upcoming year. So right now I'll just pray, and I'm of course I'm praying more for the application cycle thing too. But actually that year for me is a time where I feel like I really want to use it to grow in the way that God wants me to. And so looking forward into the future, I know people's timelines are different, but I hope that for each person that the immediate future and the prolonged future can be one filled with hope, and that the immediate future can be one filled with reinventing oneself if that's something that you need at this current time, right? If you've been kind of in this place where you're feeling down or depressed or like kind of like in this bad state, and where like because of how you're feeling internally, what you're perceiving about the external things, whether it's like the things happening in Providence or just like in the world or in your immediate setting, I hope that we can turn those things around and kind of re-look at things, and just as the message has been going on for the last 3 weeks, learn from the Lord, right? Learn to see things from the Lord's perspective, learn to do things from his perspective and his methods, and do things according to the way that he wants us to do, because his yoke is light, right, and his burden is easy, and the thing that we gain at the end far outweighs anything that we could face in the moment. So with this, I really hope that everyone has a fresh start to their week. It's Monday for everyone on the MSD 117.8, and this has been Eddie Kwan, and we really do this episode each week in hopes that it'll kind of reignite and spark your hope for the upcoming week. And so I really hope that everyone has a great third week of August. And with this, I really hope that, some people are starting school here in the States, and so I really hope that wherever you are, that we can really once again have this attitude of starting fresh again, whether it's starting this week fresh, starting this month fresh, starting this year fresh, whatever it is, wherever you are, that can be your mentality for this week. Okay, so I'll catch you guys on another week's episode of 2G Talks.
And thank you so much, Eddie, for another wonderful episode of 2G Talks. Hope you guys really enjoyed it and got some more insight into his life and things that we realize about our own. Everyone, I hope you guys have an amazing and awesome day. Leave your comments below. We'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like